Welcome to another heartfelt episode of In Conversation with Portia, the African Echo. Today we invite you to a deeply personal exploration of customary marriage in South Africa. This is a tradition that resonates with many people. It is rooted in many shared history and culture. As we are commemorating the 30 years of democracy in South Africa, we take a moment and reflect on how the legal frameworks that are surrounding the unions have changed. We'll be addressing key questions that relate to the legal framework, the recognition of the customary marriage, the concerns, the contractual obligations surrounding customary marriages. The legal expert, Mr. Caiphus Mahumani, will help us understand the evolving legislation that is aimed at protecting the rights of spouses, especially women. Mr. Mahumani, thank you so much for joining us. Customary marriage in our country, it goes way back. However, at one stage it was not recognized. If we can just reflect on this before we move forward.
Okay, thank you very much. As you know, that as a country, we had a system called apartheid. So obviously it had certain laws and certain groupings that were recognized in terms of law. Marriages before 1994 were quite recognized in terms of your Marriage Act of 1961, which required certain processes to be followed through when people got married. And some of them excluded, people who preferred to or get into marriage in terms of their customary practices. After 1994 and the coming together of the Constitution, some of those dynamics began to change. You would even recall that before 1994, things such as your common law had some form of precedence, even on customary law. So you would only exercise customary law if it fitted in terms of your common law. But obviously, when we had the transition in 1994 and the coming together of the Constitution, some of those positions were altered. Part of what altered is to, one, give customary law the same status that common law has. And both of them, they are now subject to Constitution. And the other element that changed was then to develop a law that will allow African people in South Africa to get married in line with their customs. So as I said, that customary law was given legal status even equivalent to that of common law. So it means that if people then wanted to practice their common law, whether in terms of marriage or in terms of traditional leadership or whatever area that they prefer to exercise their customary law, then that then became recognized. And more so in South Africa, we then developed all the recognition of Customary Marriages Act of 1998 that then allowed people to get married in terms of customary law. So by 1998, people would then choose whether they want to get married in terms of the Marriage Act of 1961. So maybe the other thing with Marriage Act has some differences customary law is that in terms of that Marriage Act of 61, it allows two people of opposite sex to get married. But with customary law, you will be aware that men have been getting married to more than one wife even before 1994. So because the Marriage Act only allowed marriage to take place between two people, it means then even things such as polygyny to be specific, because it's a man allowed to marry more than one wife. Then those things previously were not allowed, but when the recognition of Customary Marriages Act of 1998 came into the picture, so those areas also became recognized. But what's important is that because of recognition of Customary Marriages Act, people are now allowed to exercise their own custom to get into marriage, which was not necessarily the case before 1994.
Now, that's the interesting part, Mr. Caiphus. What are the essential requirements that must be met for the customary marriage to be considered in our country to be within the legal framework of our country's laws?
Well, in terms of validity of customary marriages, I think three things are important. The first is that people wanting to get married must be of age, meaning they should no longer be minors. So they should be legal measures. And insofar as South African law is concerned, I think even the Children's Act, age of majority is considered to be 18. So anyone who is 18 or above is allowed to enter into marriage. So that is the first requirement. So there's an age requirement. The second one is that the prospective spouses must consent. So consent is also a very important element. So it's not just about one partner identifying the other and we don't know whether the other has consented or not. So both parties must consent and ought to understand what they are getting themselves into.
How do they do that, Mr. Caiphus? Please explain the significance of consent in the customary marriage and what are the legal protections that are in place to make sure that both parties that are involved within this union, they provide an informed and voluntary consent. Remembering that in our country, Mr. Caiphus, it varies. We have different cultures, we have different backgrounds, and therefore there needs to be a way to merge within this framework. And additionally, maybe, how does the issue of consent impact the rights and benefits that are afforded to the spouses within this customary marriage type?
Well, the idea of consent is that people must, obviously, when a relationship starts, people propose one another to say they love one another. And then later, there's then a proposal to say, let's take our relationship further to a marriage. So that is the type of consent that we are talking about. I think the idea with consent is that there are instances where some people may be forced to get married or get married while legally they do not have ability to give consent. Like, for instance, I've said that the age of getting married is 18. In terms of South African law, anyone who is a child, we consider that person unable to make major decisions. They do not have ability to consent legally. So that may be one. And then there are also certain categories of people who, for one reason or the other, may have some challenges with a mental capacity to make proper decisions or to understand what they are getting themselves into. So in the event when someone has a mental capacity, almost like what happens in criminal law, that if this person at a certain time does not have mental capacity to do something, you cannot then say this person has acted because this person does not have the mental capacity. So even in terms of marriage, consent would mean this person has the mental capacity to decide of what they are getting themselves into, or they are of the right age to get themselves into marriage.
How does the issue of consent impact the rights and benefits that are afforded to the spouses within this customary marriage type?
So remember, I indicated that the first thing is that this person must be 18 or older. There are also legal exceptions. So one, as I mentioned, the first important element is to know that one must be 18. But then there are also legal exceptions that our laws have created, that even when you are below 18, you may be allowed to marry. But you need to do so, among others, maybe with the consent of your parents, or with the consent of sometimes social workers, sometimes people in the judicial system like your judges and all of that. Depending on the circumstances, if then there is such assistance, maybe the Minister of Home Affairs may be approached given certain circumstances, and if he is persuaded to believe that these people should get married, then we see that as consent. So the essence of consent is that you should be 18, but if you are not 18, there must be somebody who assists you so that whatever that you are getting into, we also take care of legal consequences of your action.
As South Africa continues to navigate the intersection of tradition and modern law, the conversation around customary marriage remains vital. Have we truly found the balance between preserving African customs and ensuring legal protection for all? The journey of marriage in our democracy is far from over. Thank you for joining us on today's thought-provoking episode. Until next time, let's keep this dialogue going because our stories matter and so do our rights. My name is Portia. Goodbye.